Joining me now is Bärí A. Williams, the COO of Bandwagon Fan Club, Inc., a data and identity analytics tech company focused on the sports and entertainment space, and a diversity, inclusion, and corporate social responsibility consultant. Bärí, thanks so much for joining us. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. And that music he was playing is, I feel like I need some jerk chicken and some
Hey, the DJ, he has us going every single morning like that. I don't know. Sometimes it's like we need to go to the Soul Train line. Other times it's like he just takes us wherever he wants to take us. But listen, thank you for joining us. And honestly, like there's so many things that I want to talk to you about, but I kind of want to just pick up where we left off, talking about these police officers, the FBI, all of a sudden pretending like they can't find people and they're looking, they're crowdsourcing it, fine and good. But to me, it seems like they seem to have all the technology in the world when it's time to find Black Lives Matter activists or trying to find people they think are part of Antifa. But it seems like they have to crowdsource this particular effort. What are your thoughts about that last story we were talking about?
I think it's ridiculous. It's probably the best way to sum it up. And I worked at Facebook, so I know exactly what you were talking about in terms of, we have all the ability, and people tag me in photos that I didn't even realize I was in the background of. So like you get a notification, you are tagged and this person wants to tag in this photo. No, please don't. This photo's from 2010. And also, why is this automatically tagging me? So they definitely have the facial recognition capability in order to facilitate that. It's just a matter of they don't want to use it for those purposes. And what's interesting to me about that is there's a level of insular protection, which you were talking about. Some of these people, these officers would find their cousins or their brothers or their sons. One thing I would applaud is the people that came out on Twitter and were saying, that's my mom. And were identifying their relatives, which I thought, that is what good allyship looks like. It isn't going to, the Juneteenth celebration and doing the cha-cha slide with your uniform. So, I mean, that's not it. So, but you also have the insular layer of protection. Remember, there was a state representative from West Virginia who just got elected, and he was part of the insurrection. So you have people who are part of these state governments, and let's go further down that rabbit hole, these state governments that are proposing certain voter restriction laws. And now it's like you're storming the Capitol. And there were so many people that day where I'm just like, it's very clear someone could easily identify you, like the dummy who had on his work badge with his name on it.
Oh my God.
So you were just going to go storm the Capitol and then clock in? What's so interesting? Yeah, they don't think, no one thought it through, but they have that right. First of all, let me start here. Your hair looks really good because we're talking about that behind the scenes, but your hair looks great. But they didn't think it through. One reason why was because they knew they were going to be protected. They knew that some way, somehow, if they didn't get me or Billy Bob, they was going to get one of us, but we were going to be protected somehow. Some of them didn't get protected. And some of them did, some of them are, most of them are, but they ain't gonna get everybody. And that's the problem. Like you said, there's the facial recognition available. There is all of that. But you said something too. You was like, we are our hands have the same blood on it as far as getting these people to the cookouts, right? I don't even want to go to the cookout no more at this point because they done invited everybody. The food ain't got no salt at this point. But you said something while we were talking in the back, and that was basically we have something to do with some of this popularizing this Black and white folks dancing on social media and things like that. Let's speak more on that. Great. So there's I'm an AK, so that's fantastic. I have swords that are of different hues. Great. But just because they can, hop in the stroll line and are on beat, that doesn't, and it's the same thing that we do with police officers, right? Is the idea that, okay, this police officer came to the Juneteenth celebration and did the cha-cha slide, or this person came to, a AAU game and handed out ice cream, or, helped sponsor a police athletic league. And that's all fine and good.
that doesn't mean you actually know their politics and if they are actually, if they are an ally or if they are complicit. So it's fine to come to, you know, something once or twice a year. That does not mean that you are an ally. That means you showed up to 2 fun events.
Right.
Like, that doesn't mean anything. So to me, we're also complicit in giving people passes because they participate in elements of our culture. That's a whole different conversation for another day that we should definitely have. Is what we give away and what we keep. And the simple thing of that viral video of the girl in the Uber, and she's Persian and she's yelling the N-word at this Southeast Asian driver, and 2 Black girls are kikiing about her doing it. And that's how people get lazy, and that's how they feel too comfortable, because you're sitting there laughing with her instead of telling her, you need to keep that out your mouth.
Right. Right. And it furthers, I think the part of it that is so destructive is because in those moments that they have these viral videos, and it's directly tied to all the stories, because 2 of the officers dancing in the Black Lives Matter video were part of the insurrection. That becomes literal propaganda. Those videos become literal propaganda that is wielded out every single day, pushed out to make it seem like there's not a systemic problem. And then we take a look out of Kentucky, like the Breonna Taylor killing, and the fact that now the officer, Kenneth Walker, is walking free with no charges against him. Like this is part of the same system. And I want you to speak to it, like how that propaganda goes towards protecting and insulating this systemic problem that we're facing every single day. So it's like in one day we're saying her name, Breonna Taylor. The next day, something on social media is pushing that propaganda that led to her death. Yeah,
I think, well, there are 2 issues with that. One, people are conflating individual actions and individual incidents as like, yay, racism's over. It's like, no, you went to Juneteenth and, you know, then maybe that time you did the electric slide. But either way, that did not end systemic racism. That did not lower people's interest rates when they tried to apply for a mortgage. That didn't up their credit score. That didn't get them admission to college. Like, it didn't do any of those things. So I'm not interested in that narrative. And that seems to be the narrative that people push, is like, oh, well, if these 2 officers also danced at the Black Lives Matter protest, then they can't possibly be racist, or they can't possibly share these types of views. Like, who says that they can't? Who says that they were not mandated to go to that protest? Who said that? You don't know that they were or were not. Could have been their choice, could have not. And the second aspect to what you're talking about in terms of the officer walking free in Breonna Taylor's case, well, it's also very easy to do that and push a narrative that, oh, well, it can't be, he couldn't have been biased, or this couldn't have been wrong because a Black man was complicit in helping him get off. So it's also incredibly difficult to combat those narratives when you have Black folks who are willing participants in their own subjugation and our subjugation, because it's going to help them.
That's heavy.
That's the mic drop right there.
Considering Mitch McConnell, you know, has already started compiling a list of people he wants to replace him if and when he retires, because he's probably not going to run for re-election. Daniel Cameron's at the top of that list.
Right.
See, and Daniel Cameron is Black. You know, yesterday I was getting on Daniel Cameron, and not because of the whole state of Kentucky, but this is what represents Kentucky. And he's over here shucking and jiving in the name of like white folks. You know, he's married. He's a whole Black man that doesn't care. But just because, like, and he thinks that because he married a white woman, it shows unity and union. But it's like that's so constructed.
Did you see any of his family in those engagement photos?
Exactly. Like it's ridiculous to me. So there's a lot that goes into these stage photos, these stage moments. And of course, he would have somebody like Daniel Cameron to say that that's diversity and inclusion as far as within Kentucky. Speaking of diversity and inclusion, you worked with that with Facebook. Could you tell us a little bit about how that went, how you started with that?
Yeah, so I worked at Facebook in the legal department for about 2.5 years. And while I was there, I started the supplier diversity program. And for me, that was important because the employee numbers at all tech companies are not particularly fantastic. But at the larger tech companies, they tend to be worse because you don't hire as many diverse people as you actually have open requisitions for. So the percentage just keeps falling, even if you're trying. So, so I thought, well, you know what? If we have a supplier diversity program, because not everybody wants to work at a company, they want their own company. But this creates economic access and opportunity, and for people to do it within their own communities and provide those resources to their own communities after they make money from a Facebook. So that to me was a passion project that I did for 2 years. I did it nights, weekends, on my maternity leave. And for me, it was just something that I thought was too important to not see happen. And that was not my day job. My day job was being a lawyer, a supply chain and procurement and licensing privacy lawyer, helping to build drones, lasers, and satellites. So I would say that experience was overall was a good one. Until, it was like the Kalani album. It was good till it wasn't.
Speaking of good till it wasn't, I experienced something. I wonder from your perspective at Facebook, because I experienced something at a company called HubSpot that I worked at for some years in Boston. And it was almost like I got locked in to that corporate structure, and it was a great experience. I got nothing really bad to say about it until they started the diversity and inclusion part of their company, and then they wanted to have meetings, and of course, like, I'm one of 5 Black people in the entire 1,000 person company, and all of a sudden the spotlight was shined on me. And I'm like, it didn't really make for a comfortable environment, because now I was a Black person who had to speak on behalf of Blackness, right? Which is fine. I could on behalf of the Blacks, right? Totally could do it, but I don't think that they understood the Pandora's box that they were opening up in me and within the Black folks, because they were there because, like, if they really wanted to talk about the real truth, let me rephrase that. I don't know if they could have handled if we started talking about the real issues that are underneath diversity and inclusion. What did you run into as you started leading the way on that particular issue with regard to, did they actually want to talk about what it was necessary to be done, or was it just kind of like plug and place some people here and there?
No, I would say, well, first thing, when I got to Facebook, the diversity department was 2 people at that point. Oh, wow. So, yeah, it was just the person who is now the global head of it. Her name is Maxine Williams, no relation. And it was she and another woman named Kiva, and she's great. But they were overwhelmed because it's, 2 people trying to figure out what should this strategy look like and do. And I initially went to them and said, well, what about starting a supplier diversity program? And they were like, do you realize it's only 2 of us right here? Like, we're trying to get employee numbers up. And I understood that, and that's fine. But I think the larger issue, and I think you find that not just at big tech companies, but the smaller ones, is just what you're talking about, Benjamin, is the idea that it can be very isolating, and particularly when there is no diversity department. Like, you're working at, let's call it a startup that might have 150 employees. So any type of activity, whether that's Black History Month, Women's History Month, Pride Month, whatever, they're going to go look to the people that fall within those identities to plan those events. But you're not giving me any resources for it. I'm not being compensated extra for that double. Now I got 2 jobs just for the price of one. And what they want to do is have these nice, bright, shiny pictures to put on the website and to tell people about. Yeah. But the problem is you're not actually creating the infrastructure to support these things. And now you are relying on your employees to do it. And that is the other Pandora's box. It's not just that you don't want to talk about it. It's that you don't want to fund it and you don't want to put any teeth behind it. And you want me to do it for free. And now if I say, you know what, I don't really want to do it anymore because it's not yielding anything. Then they're looking at you sideways because you don't want to help the company. Now you're not a team player. So it's multi-layered.
Yeah. And you, so you said it was fun till it wasn't, or it was good till it wasn't at Facebook. Did any of those struggles have to do with you being a woman? And, you know, what were the other struggles that you went through? Because that, when it did come out, the diversity and inclusion situation, it was big, right? But then I had to think about it like, Black people didn't just come out yesterday. So these companies and these people want to find the Black token or whatever, or the Black person that may be the strongest voiced one, and kind of use them, like you said, and squeeze all the Black out of them. But when people ask them, when people ask them,
but not too much. It has to be the palatable Black. It can't be. Yes. It can't be me. It can't be you. It can't be Ben. It has to be somebody who is going to toe the party line and work with corporate comms to make sure that the narrative is crafted correctly and that you're delivering it correctly. And I'm not that person.
Yeah.
And is that what caused you to not work with them, or was that something that
I think for me it was there were really just kind of two things. One is I wasn't sure what the career trajectory looked like. And this isn't just exclusive to Facebook. I mean, it's any company at that point. When I joined, it was, I want to say 8,300 people, which sounds like a lot. But now when you think about the fact it's like 50,000. And when I left, it probably was around 18,000. And so when you're, you have all those layers, it's like, well, how far can I go?
Right.
And how far do I want to go? And is the person that I report to, who has to advocate for me in those rooms that I'm not in, is he willing to advocate for me for how far I will go? And the answer to that I found was no. Wow.
I'm as you talk, like it's not triggering, but it's just reminding me of so many memories. I never forget being in the PhD program that I didn't finish, but that's a whole nother conversation. They when they were doing diversity there for our weekend PhD, all the stuff that we're doing, they were like, we need a Ben Dixon. And they literally came and found me on the other side of the campus and pulled me in to take a picture so that they could show diversity. But then when the rubber met the road, I ended up having to go almost to war with them because of how they were treating me behind the scenes. And so it's just like this tokenism that they want. They want our representation. They don't want our voices. And that's something that I feel like, I don't know how many people experience that in corporate America and in academia, but I just feel like everybody, all of us Black folks who are in those spaces are getting a dose of that on a regular basis.
Yeah. And it could be academia. It could be all these spaces, and that's why I asked Bärí the same thing. Like, you were at Facebook. People probably assume that because diversity and inclusion was created, like, it was just like this Black protection and it was this and it was that. But I remember working for another company, and they hired me because at the time I wore my hair big, and they were like, and then you're Haitian, you speak another language? Oh, this is great. But when I started talking about Colin Kaepernick, they no longer wanted my voice. Yeah. They didn't want me. They said, we got 2 Black anchors. This is going to be great. This is going to be great. It was me and my other colleague, both from FAMU. They literally said this was going to be great. And then as soon as we started getting Black and using our Black voices, they was like, this is too much.
They shut the whole damn company down.
Quiet.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I want to shift gears just a little bit here with the time that we have left, because there's another side that I'm definitely curious about exploring with you, and we probably have to take it up at another time. But what we're fighting up against in terms of what people are generalizing, calling the algorithm, and how the different algorithms, Facebook and Google and YouTube specifically, take people and they put them on a trajectory that takes them towards right-wing extremism. And it's like you could watch one of my videos and the next video would be Ben Shapiro, right? And then he's the gatekeeper and takes them down. I don't, just from your perspective in your field, like how much of that did you find to be just business as usual because it was profitable for them, or just ideological? Like this is kind of what, they lean towards in these spaces, or both for that matter.
Yeah, I would say that I don't necessarily think it's ideological. I think some of it came down to a business decision. And I say that because I distinctly remember when I was at Facebook during the 2016 election. And that was when Republicans really started complaining about this notion of, we're censoring them and not letting them, we're not letting their ideas be heard in the free market. It's like, okay, well, first off, this is a private platform. So it's not like the other thing that I feel like I say at least once a week on Twitter is you do not have the right to free speech on a private platform. You just don't. If you violate the terms of service, you get kicked off. It's very simple. So that whole, it's cancel culture and it's denial of First Amendment rights. Go create your own platform. I'm pretty sure that's why Gab and 4chan and Parler and Partridge Under a Pear Tree exist. It's not for you to just spew whatever you're spewing on. And if you're not going to read the terms of service, and hi, I'm a lawyer, I always tell people to read it so you know what you're signing up for. If you're not going to read it, then you can't really be mad when you get kicked off. So I don't think it was so much an ideological decision as it was a business decision where you have a large contingent of people complaining that their ads are not being seen widely or their discussions are not being seen widely. And what is it that people are being introduced to via the algorithms in their timelines? And so I think that is what motivated them to shift gears. I don't think it was an ideological thing at all. If anything, you would think that the majority of these folks, if you look at the donations of some of the C-suite of a lot of these companies, they play both sides.
It seems to be the PR portion of it that really kind of drove it, because the people who are the loudest is what I'm hearing you saying. The people who are loudest got what they wanted in this paradigm with the algorithms. So even against the actual data, the loudness of the right is what helped them win out in that regard. Yeah,
I think it's just, it's I don't remember what's the exact phrase. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. Yeah. Such, but that's basically what happened is, you have a contingent of people who came to the Valley and went on like basically an award tour to complain to Facebook, to Google, to a bunch of to Twitter. They went and stopped at all three of these places and just straight up complained. So,
and it worked.
And it worked because their voices are primarily usually the ones that we hear or we see. Meanwhile, we over here like, Lord, can we just get a veto, Lord? Like,
Well, I'm actually curious to see how that is going to morph when you think about new platforms like Clubhouse. Like, how is that going to change the conversation, particularly when you look at it from the standpoint of there's no real moderation going on there now. So I stumbled into a room, I want to say about a month and a half ago, where a rapper was given erroneous information on criminal justice reform and pardons. And I was like, leave quietly.
Yes. So, we talk about this. Look, before you get out of here, Bärí, we talk about this all the time. And I'm always saying, like, Clubhouse is kind of reckless. You could just walk into rooms and people who have no place to be saying some of these things literally just create rooms, implicate themselves, or just be given information about not being broke, and they're probably in a bedroom with just a mattress. Like, it's just this weird things like that. But yes, Clubhouse is just a free form for everybody.
They're going to need some moderation at some point, because everybody can't brand themselves an expert on that platform. And at some point, there may be an issue around if or how they may be liable for giving these people the opportunity in which to do so, and you are not correcting it. So we'll see.
We will.
But yeah,
we will definitely see.
I had to tap out when I saw a room called "How to Get a Sugar Daddy in ATL." I was like, you know what?
Girl, that's the only room you saw. Girl, that's a lie on that.
I saw that one. I said the devil is a liar. Anyway, so Bärí, thanks so much for joining us. There's a lot of conversations that I want to have. We'd love to have you back anytime that you're available to dig into these topics a lot more.
Sure, happy to.